Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, coming at you live to talk about Episode 4 of Star Trek Discovery, The Butcher's Knife Cares Not for the Lamb's Cry. And I got to get it out of the way right away and say this show is nailing it. It's getting more and more the vibe of proper Star Trek, at least what is Star Trek in my estimation. And the story overall, aspects of it in this episode really harkened back to me two of my all-time favorite Star Trek episodes from two of my favorite series, those being the original series, which is my number one favorite, and Enterprise, which is my secondary favorite after, TOS. The Devil in the Dark with the Horta creature, as well as the Enterprise episode Vox Sola, which had this sort of stringy, a very symbiotic, strange creature. It was all white and stringy and everything like that, and it latched on to Captain Archer and Commander Trip Tucker, the chief engineer, and I think Malcolm, chief of security. I don't remember exactly for 100% certain, but it comes down to Hoshi and to Paul to figure out through this high mathematical equation, that it can communicate with them and back and forth, and that's how it that's how it's resolved, basically, the whole story, getting to know the creature, getting to understand and communicate with the creature. And very much like The Devil in the Dark, which is the original series episode where Spock is able to mind meld with the Horta creature and understand that it's just protecting itself. It's its survival instincts that are running amok in this dilithium or lithium mining facility. So you have a call back to that even in this episode with a dilithium mining facility, a colony that's under attack by Klingons because this is wartime and such like that. And this is one of the chief manufacturing plants that the Federation gets its dilithium from. So all of that stuff, it comes full circle, and you can see that the homages are there, and I'm sure they were put in there on purpose, and I just loved that. I loved seeing Michael Burnham coming from this at a unique perspective. The tardigrade creature that was being held on the USS Glenn, they finally figure out that this thing, I had speculated, and I don't think I voiced this in any of the videos talking about the series, but I had begun to speculate maybe it was a microscopic organism that had somehow, because of the spore drive and its effects, had somehow gained size and become gigantic or something like that, and then run amok on the ship, as a poor side effect of scientific experimentation. Little had I suspected that this was the natural state of this creature, and that it was just looking for food. It was just bumming some mushrooms, and it found its way onto the Glen. And it was actually, its survival instincts were kicking in. That's why it became vicious, and that's why the Klingons perished at the claws of it, And Captain Lorca wants Burnham to bring her expertise and her analytical nature to the table to sort of dissect this thing and then figure out what makes it tick. She's partnered up with the security chief we were introduced to in the previous episode. And, of course, they're butting heads a little bit because Burnham is taking it scientifically. She's very much, the embodiment of what a Star Trek personality, a character would be. She's objective. She's looking at this with, even though she hails from the sort of logical Vulcan side of things because she grew up in that environment most of her life, there is still an empathetic nature to her and a compassionate nature to her. She wants to understand this tardigrade creature. And so it's very much akin to, the aforementioned TOS episode Devil in the Dark and the Enterprise episode Vox Sola for that. Because we're put into a position in both of those stories where the crew is under the attack, or a colony is under the attack of a creature, an alien entity, and there's much more going on beyond what is just at surface level. People whose lives are being lost or being jeopardized. And it's all a matter of communing with this other living creature and understanding it. And in the case of Discovery, they're actually able to utilize the creature. Now, it's taxing the creature, and then some to make it a part of the spore drive, but it is directable. When it's hooked up to the apparatuses that are taken off the Glen and subsequently used on Discovery to pinpoint the location of the spore drive sort of warp effect. This is what allows them to warp into the colony, right overhead it, and get rid of Klingon birds of prey that are attacking it by allowing them to crash into each other. I love the special effects of the Discovery when it goes into the spore sort of warp. You see that the saucer section is spinning both clockwise and counterclockwise at the same time, which is something I suspected was probably going to be the case. But the entire ship sort of flips in tandem with that, and then it just blinks out of existence, seemingly. And even the colonists, they looked up and they only saw the aftermath of the birds of prey being destroyed. And the little girl says, who saved us? And they have no idea. They absolutely have no idea, which lends credibility to all of what is happening in Discovery to be able to happen and not mess up the consequences of the subsequent timeline. Because this ship doesn't exist on official records for the most part. What it's doing, what it's capable of is all top secret, above top secret. They are, a secretive plant in amongst this ongoing war effort. So only very few are going to ever know about this. I'm sure it will not be reflected on anyone's actual, records or in the history logs or anything like that. It will probably be much like if you go back to the Menagerie, the original series 2-parter, which utilized segments of the original pilot, The Cage. When it came to Talos 4, where eventually Captain Pike was meant to go back to after suffering his radiation accident, Spock had commandeered the Enterprise, and I'm not going to get into all the details of that. It's a great 2-parter, very classic episode. But, it's kind of along the same lines as, the Federation UFP at the time, or Starfleet at the time, USPA, had basically cordoned off Talos 4 from anyone going near it ever again, and on the charge of being put to death if you went against that ruling. And so we're in an era where that's still very much valid, where these things can exist and can be happening, coinciding with the Star Trek we're more familiar with, or what we assume we are familiar with, what we expect to be happening, on the Enterprise with Captain Pike and everything like that, out exploring or being a part of the war effort. Whatever our assumptions are, all of this is perfectly, tangible in the moment as existing, and it conflicts with nothing because it's never going to be publicly aware, to the greater Federation, to the greater of Starfleet. Only few people know about it. And so I thought that was just utmost clever as all hell, that aspect of it, because they can then do anything. I mean, for all of the advanced technology the Discovery seems to have, for all of the scientific, stuff that's going on aboard it, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there are other ships out there that are probably less advanced, and they'll never know anything about this ship being in existence, But that's just another aspect of the show that I find fascinating and really excites me, because it frees them up, that they don't have to be so stringent when it comes to the actual, timeline as it is accepted, the canon, if you will. Which I think, canon is a relative term. You can either adhere to it and be, predisposed to it and have preconceptions as a result of it, or you can be more open-minded and think of it along the lines of, well, in the so-called canon, there have been discrepancies, and those discrepancies have both been addressed on screen as well as left unaddressed, and even more, mixed up and convoluted at times. So, I mean, there is a discontinuity as much as there is a canon. And it's subjective, whether you want to apply yourself to that being the only familiarity you have with Star Trek, or you want to be more open-minded, read the novels, read the tie-ins, all the Star Trek literature and stuff like that, which I'm a big fan of. I have many Star Trek books that I've read in like the last, decade or two, really. But getting back to this episode of Discovery, I really felt like, in talking about the vibe being much more closely relatable to Star Trek, to what I recognize as Star Trek, it's not just down to what Michael Burnham was doing, in effect, studying this tardigrade creature and everything like that, but it was also all of the characters, really. There was much better of a rapport between them, a much better realized interactivity, interconnectivity between them. When you look at, like, Captain Lorca talking to Stamets in this episode, it wasn't as static as it was in the previous episode. Stamets himself was much more animated, I felt, and was bringing much more a humanistic interpretation of what his opinion was. You know, the conflict he was feeling as a result of what Lorca was asking of him, trying to push the spore drive. And even though they were still, you know, he wants time. He wants time enough to study this and do the calculations necessary. And because of the war effort, Lorca is riding his ass. He's like, dude, we got to do this now. We got to do this yesterday. Get on it, you know. And seeing that he had his face busted at one point, he smacked his head into the console, and he's in, you know, sick bay. I like the doctor. From what I understand, I believe there's supposed to be a relationship between Stamets and the doctor. The actor playing the doctor on the show, they're supposed to be, you know, a couple. I don't know if they're already a pre-existing couple, or if that's something that we'll see grow and evolve. But I'm good with their pairing. I really like the way they were bounding off each other, sort of the verbal quips and everything. Much more flattering to their characters than Stamets in the previous episode, just sort of name-calling Lurker to Michael Burnham and all this kind of stuff. He still has issues with her, you know, trust issues, and she's the mutineer and everything like that. We get a lot of that interplay, even more so between Michael Burnham and Saru in this episode again. And I like that Saru, you know, he was just placating her. He was just being nice to her under the supposition that she would be leaving. She wouldn't be staying on Discovery. So, oh, you're the finest officer I've ever known. Oh, you know, I'm complimenting you because I feel sorry for you. I feel pity for you. I'm never going to see you again, and I'm just going to leave you on a good, you know, note and everything. His threat ganglia were going haywire when he realized, oh, she's still here. No, you know, and I absolutely love that. I love the rapport between them. I cannot wait to get my hands on the tie-in prequel novel Desperate Hours by David Mack, because I hear there is a lot more in-depth discussion and interactivity between those two characters that will flesh out that much more the relationship between them while they were both on the Shenzhou. And I can't wait to get my hands on that to check that out as well, because you really get a great sense of it's for lack of a better term, I know this is going to be sacrilegious to some, but it's very much the Dr. McCoy, Bones McCoy, Spock dynamic unfolding between Saru and Michael Burnham. I'm sorry if you hate me, if you want to stab your screen because I've just said that. Sacrilegious though it may be to some, that is the dynamic I'm getting between the two. There's that funny playing off of each other, that you know, sort of snarky-ish quality between them, and it's fantastic. I loved it. Even Tilly, you know, Michael Burnham's roommate, was less annoying, a lot less annoying. She started the episode kind of talkative, overly talkative, when you know, she brings in the package, which is the last will and testament of Captain Georgiou. And of course, you know, Burnham doesn't want anything to do with it. She's not ready to confront the death of her captain. It's been 6 months, so that thing's been floating around laser ship or something like that, whatever it is, the UPS of the day for a while out in space. Finally caught up with her, and she can't face it until the end of the episode. But the Tilly character, she opens the episode bringing that, you know, to Burnham's awareness, and I was kind of still annoyed with her. But I really felt like they got everybody more pitch perfect. You know, everyone had an arc of being much more relatable and much more likable by the end of this episode. Even Tilly, even that character who I was really annoyed by in the previous episode, she's much more grounded, and I felt realistic. The way she comes to Burnham's aid by sneaking out of the engineering department, the canister of spores, to start to play around with, you know, understanding the tardigrade creature, and that she very compassionately says, you know, those people on the colony, I'm here, I'm stuck here, I can't do anything to help them, but I can help you. And maybe by helping her, you know, it's left unspoken, but maybe by helping Burnham, I will be helping the greater cause. It will have a positive effect on the greater effect, you know, that kind of thing. And it did. It absolutely did. And so, you know, her character was much less annoying, much more relatable, much more likable. Even her sort of advice in the end to Burnham when everything was said and done, you know, I admire you. I look up to you. You're not afraid of anything. I have all kinds of anxiety, but you're not afraid of anything. What anyone thinks about you, what anyone says about you, whatever you might confront, you walked in and you tamed the beast. And you're going to sit there and let that duffel bag under your bed freak you out, scare you? You're not afraid of anything. You're going to confront that. It's just a matter of time. I have faith that you will. And this is what prompts Burnham to do that in the end of the episode. And it was really sentimental. Even as little as we got to know Captain Georgiou, I still, for myself, as an sort of empathetic mindset, and a fan of Michelle Yeoh, when she died, I cringed. I was upset by that, and seeing that last sort of holographic message left behind for Michael Burnham from her, and then seeing what was in the case. It brought a little bit of a tear to my eye. I was like, wow, they hit it out of the park with this episode, and all the Klingon stuff as well. I mean, I can't forget to discuss that, because it took up a much larger portion of this episode than it had the previous, and it's sort of on par with what the first two episodes of the series were, the sort of prequel or pilot, the first pilot. Some people are saying those first two episodes were the first pilot, whereas the third episode was technically the second pilot. Whatever, whatever you want to say about it. But all the Klingon stuff in this episode I actually found pretty compelling, because it's dealing with the hierarchy left behind from T'Kuvma, the loss of T'Kuvma, and you have Vok, this sort of, outcast. I mean, he's a house of none. He has no family. He has no house to call back on. T'Kuvma was the house that took him in with open arms. And because he's albino, he looks completely different to, okay, all the Klingons look absolutely different from anything we've ever recognized as Klingons. Okay, whatever. Move beyond it. He looks different from what the accepted norm for the Klingons as yet, thus far, appear to be in this series. And he has a sort of constant, benefactor in L'Rell, this female Klingon who's very much ready and willing to back him. She did not, per her dialogue in this episode, want to step up and be, the fill-in for T'Kuvma. T'Kuvma put that responsibility on Vok, and she's willing and able to enable him, to back him, and take inspiration from him, because of her faith in T'Kuvma and T'Kuvma's cause, being reborn as Kahless, shining the light of Kahless over the Klingon Empire again, and reuniting those warring houses. And it's very possible, I think, a grand speculation that what divided all of the houses in the 100 years that humanity has been away from them might have been the virus that caused all the flat-headed, Klingons and everything that we would see in the TOS era much more abundantly, but was explained in a two-part episode in the final season of Star Trek Enterprise. The name of the episode escapes me. But we saw Dr. Phlox and Captain Archer were a part of that, and as creating an antidote. One of the side effects was smoothing the ridges of Klingons' heads, their skulls. And so that became a minority. The people, the Klingons with the smooth heads became a minority within the Klingon Empire as we understand it. And so this could have, because those houses still wanted to be considered respectable and still wanted to adhere to the honor system, there was probably conflict born out of that. And that could be the very reason for the conflict now. These Klingons in Discovery may look so grotesquely different to some people's estimation from what is accepted, Klingon, the Klingon appearance. That could have been their way of trying to correct the anomaly, the smoothed ridges and stuff like that. And that could have even further exploited the divisions between the houses and the war that was, brewing on the Klingon homeworld of Kronos. And just making it that much more tantamount. And so everything was divided. You have smooth heads over here, you have the classical ridges over here, and then you have this new breed, which they all could have been an answer to genetic manipulation and trying to correct anomalies and antidotes to viruses and things like that just got super normally out of hand. But of course, all of that is speculation. Getting back to the story proper, again, that hierarchy, that interesting dilemma between Vok and L'Rell as going up against Cole. Cole, who we saw in the first two-parter, he was very much challenging toward T'Kuvma, and so Cole is now trying to take over, spearhead the movement of uniting the houses. And as far as he's concerned, it's only opportunistic. We're going to reunite for now, and then we're going to lay waste to the Federation. But once that's done, it's every man for himself again. And I find that compelling. I find it compelling that he left Voq to die. I find it compelling that Laurel, where she seemed to turn on Voq and go with Cole, side with him, once that Klingon vessel warped out of the debris field and Voq was left to die on the dead Shenzhou, we see Laurel beam in behind him, and she's committed to him. And that's insane. It's absolutely intriguing and compelling to me, And so, I mean, everything about this episode was spectacular. The only minor complaint I have is I was so kind of sad to see the security chief chick, be killed by the tardigrade. She went in on the attack, so she kind of got what she was asking for. But the actress herself, most people know her from Battlestar Galactica. I don't watch that show. I've never watched that show. But she was in an episode of Star Trek Continues, the fan series, and that's where I am more familiar with her from. And so, with that in mind, I was kind of bummed out that she perished in this episode. I mean, all bets are off. you notice a character, and that character could be dead the next episode. And I find that, again, aggressively compelling in the sense that I'm gritting my teeth. I'm like, oh my God, what is going to happen? Every single episode. As per the preview for the next, Captain Lorca himself is going to get captured by the Klingons. Are we going to see Jason Isaacs being killed off already? Like, is that a thing that's going to happen? And then Saru becomes the commander of the Discovery? I hope not. Hope Lorca's around for the long haul. But I mean, it's possible is the problem, and also the excitement. Anything is possible. Any of these characters could die. Even Michael Burnham. She might not make it out of the series alive. Who knows? It's anyone's guess. And so nothing but superlatives to say about this episode. Fantastic. Spectacular. I feel sorry for anyone not giving this show a chance. For anyone with these preconceptions of what accepted Star Trek ought to be, that this is a parody, that this is a disgrace, that this somehow in some way disrespects Gene's vision because it's war. I mean, there's so many things that I hear people complaining about that are things that have already been done in Star Trek before. Deep Space Nine already had seasons full of war. Enterprise already had a season of war with the Xindi. There's a lot of people bitching about the cross parsec, communication, mind meld between Sarek and Michael Burnham in the previous episode, or in the second part of, the first two episodes. And the thing is, people are acting like this is a brand new thing we've never seen before. Only we have. In Star Trek Enterprise, there was the relationship between Trip Tucker and T'Pol. They were able to communicate across vast distances. And there was also the Vulcan two-parter or three-parter in the fourth season where Jonathan Archer, the captain of the NX-01 Enterprise, had come into contact with Surox Katra and was able to, in dream states, communicate with him as though he had never died. It's the same exact thing that was happening to Michael Burnham while she was in that, half-destroyed brig and was having a discussion with Sarek. It didn't need to be the actual Sarek communing with her across a vast distance. It could have just been the essence of him left behind, the essence of his Katra left behind, in her mind. We've seen it before, and you're bitching about it. At least some of you people out there are bitching about it. So, whatever. I don't care. It's all subjective. You want to be, a stagnant little, joyless, judgmental person and not like this, not give the show a chance. Whatever works for you. Whatever floats your boat. Whatever helps you sleep at night. On the other hand, I prefer to give this show a chance, and I am loving every drip and minute of it now. So, with that said, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. Love it or hate it. I'm open to any interpretation. But, I'm not going to have a lot to say to people who just want to bash on this show. But I'd like to hear your opinions, your thoughts and opinions on Star Trek Discovery if you've gotten this far into it. And if you agree with me that it is conforming much more to a feel and a vibe and an essence. I mean, look at the opening of the episode. A very Kobayashi Maru sort of, practice session where Lorca was commanding, and there was a supposed attack via Klingon birds of prey, and all hands lost. I mean, that's straight out of Star Trek 2. And it's straight out of one of the Enterprise novels, where they actually told the proper story of the Kobayashi Maru, as the NX-01 Enterprise had encountered it. And if you're actually going to straight face tell me that that wasn't spectacular, that didn't have you at the edge of your seat, I don't know what I can do for you. So yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this. I cannot wait till the next one, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.